Soldano, the SLO 100. That has been the wet dream of countless generations of guitarists, right? And it's something like the grandmother of all high gain amps. A beautiful amp. The only problem being it's not exactly affordable. Always between $4,000 and $5,000, something like that. But you know what, boys and girls? I've got some good news for you, because today, and I mean it, today, Soldano are releasing this, which is the Super Lead Overdrive Distortion pedal. And that could be something like the poor man's Soldano Distortion. So today I'm gonna test this pedal, and I'm gonna find out if I can make your wet dreams come true. Here we go! Let me show you the signal path. As usual, I'm playing my beloved Fernandez Ravel with EMG pickups. This is the front end, and the back end is two 4x12 cabs. Two Mesa Boogie 4x12 cabs. One with the stock vintage 30s from 2002, great sounding cab. And the other one is loaded with Eminence DV77 speakers, and we're blending them 50-50. Sounds really nice. By the way, check out my Eminence DV77 IR pack below and make me more rich and famous. Anyway, so and in between we're gonna try a lot of different stuff, because the first and very important question when you test a pedal, a distortion pedal, overdrive pedal of any sort is, are you gonna play it into a power amp, or are you gonna play it into a clean channel? That's a very important question, because we know there are pedals out there like the Metal Zone or like the great sounding Rev G4, the red one, which sound better straight into a power amp, where like a clean channel with the additional grind and the additional overtones and the additional gain is simply like over the top. So they are already voiced just to be amplified by a power amp. So we gotta find out where this pedal sits, because we actually got three options. Like one option would be to play it straight into a clean power amp, something like this Seymour Duncan Power Stage. Great sounding, very clean sounding power amp. I use it a lot for making IRs, for example. More and more guitarists are playing straight into a Class D clean sounding pedal power amp these days, so that is the first thing we're gonna test. And the next option would be to play it into a tube power amp, which will give you that typical tube amp smiley EQ curve. Typically, a tube amp's gonna give you more low end, gonna give you more overtones, more highs, presence and resonance. It's gonna scoop the mids a little bit and give you a certain tube grind and just sound different. So that's the second option. And the third option, of course, is playing it into a clean channel, which will sound very, very different, which we will see in a minute. And you know what? Today we're gonna do all those three things. So the question is, how are we gonna test this? And you know what? I got the perfect partner. Look at this. Guess you've seen it already. This is Blackstar's new pedal platform called the Amped 1. And the cool thing about this is, this can go from a clean Class D amp, just like the Seymour Duncan, to still a power amp, but with a tube emulation of different tube characteristics. Very interesting. So this can emulate a tube power amp as well. Or you can switch on one of the preamps. There's one called USA and one called UK. So you can go from totally clean Class D power amp to a tube power amp to a full clean tube amp. And we're gonna test all those three options. But don't worry, you know I've got enough real tube amps. We're also gonna test a real tube amp. So by the end of this video, we will know how to use this pedal. Let's get started. Okay, so all knobs are more or less at noon, and we start with playing this pedal straight into a Class D power amp. And let me just say this before we get started. Usually, most distortion pedals are too dark for that. They want the additional grind of a clean channel. Let's just see what happens. So. So what we got to do is we got to boost the treble and the presence. That's something you got to do with pretty much every distortion pedal if you go straight into a... Much better. I can already say that's a thick distortion. I would call this usable. But it also sounds rather flat, which is not the fault of the Soldano. It's more like the boring sounding, clean sounding power amp. Again, usable, but it sounds flat. I miss some of the typical tube overtones here. It sounds like still too mid-forward and just feels a little two-dimensional. All right, so let's activate the tube output section of the Amped 1. And that's what I've described earlier, right? So this is the smiley curve EQ. And this feels much better and much closer to playing a real tube amp. So let's check out the different voicings. Right now we're playing the EL84 voicing. So this is the most aggressive one, that's 6L6. Sounds really cold and aggressive. I think I prefer the EL34, which is a little more mid-forward and a little warmer and more vocal sounding. So yeah, compliment for this tube output section. That's really cool, and it makes the pedal come alive. Let's check out the EQ. Still, we need to boost the presence and the treble to get enough high end, because we're still just going into a power amp, right? Not the most effective EQ, but this just feels like a passive EQ on an amp, so that's all right. It still feels a little flat, I gotta say that. A little flat. Much better than the Class D. Let's try this EQ. Okay, this is dangerous. Okay, so that's very different than the passive EQ on your amp. Very effective. Be careful with this. Okay, but this helps. Like, you see, I've slightly boosted the bass and the treble. Yeah, but come on, this is a good tone, right? This is good, and especially if you don't want to carry around a full tube amp. So this is, like I said, much better than the Class D amp, but now we're going to activate the preamp. So that's going to be interesting. And now I'm pretty sure we cannot use the same settings, because as soon as you activate a preamp, you need way less high frequencies coming from the pedal, because the clean amp's going to introduce a lot of overtones and additional distortion. So if we just switch, it's not going to sound good. So you see, that sounds weird. That means we got to change the settings. And also one important thing, depending on which clean channel you play, is that, you know, you got to fiddle around with the output level of the pedal and the gain of the preamp. because, you know, they just interact, and you got to find a sweet spot where you don't overdrive the input too much. And, you know, sometimes it can be like a wah or something, like with big differences depending on how clean the preamp is. But let's turn this off for a second and let's just have a listen to the preamps themselves. So this is the UK preamp. Slightly dirty. And this is the US channel. Much cleaner. I think that's better for what we need here. So it gets a little more twangy if you push the gain. But this could be cool. Let's just see what happens if we turn on. Let's go back to noon on the EQ first. Maybe here as well. And let's turn this on. Oh, that feels so different. Like more compression, also a little more indirect and more like an amp. Let's open it up a little. And I like that. I prefer that. I prefer that. You still got to be careful with the EQ. It's very extreme. And you know what? What's interesting, I haven't talked about the Soldano distortion at all. And you know why? Because it feels so familiar. It just feels so familiar. It's just, no, it just sounds so typical modern high gain, because we've heard this tone so much, that kind of distortion. It just works. It sounds high gain, it sounds in your face, but it sounds very tight. I don't need a boost here. Good distortion. It feels great. And I feel like overall, playing it into a clean channel, like a super clean channel, like the USA channel on the Blackstar, works best. Still gotta say, it's usable into a 2-power amp. The linear setting, like a pure Class D power amp, it sounds too boring for me and doesn't sound like a real tube amp. But let's check out the UK channel just for fun. Ooh. And now you can see we're clearly overdriving that channel. So let's bring down the volume a little bit. And also the gain. Here the low end starts getting farty. So we want to stay below that. So this sounds quite a lot more compressed, a little more mid-forward, and feels very different. Also a little darker in the So this is less clean. If you go back to the US channel, you know, it's more scooped, it's more bite in the high end. But the UK setting actually sounds even more like playing into a real amp. gotta say I'm quite impressed by the Amp 1 and how versatile it is. And I like the distortion. This is more like a one-trick pony, but it's still flexible and versatile enough so you can throw it in front of different pieces of gear. Power amps, clean-sounding preamps, and slightly dirty-sounding preamps. So, yeah, well done. Now, let's do the final test. Now, I want to go from the Soldano straight into one of my most beloved amps, which is the Brunetti Extra Lead, which I think is not that far away from a Soldano, by the way. So we're gonna skip the Blackstar now, go straight into the clean channel of the Brunetti, and then we're gonna compare this setup, Soldano into Brunetti clean, with just playing the high gain channel on the Brunetti. Sounds good, right? So let's do that. And we need different settings again. Okay, let's switch to the Brunetti. Well, that sounds lush. And back to the clean channel with the Soldano. Brunetti. So the Brunetti sounds quite a bit softer, especially in the attack. Also not as tight, but beautiful. Back to the Soldano. Getting closer. All right, I've heard enough. Time to sum it up. So I gotta say, of all the things we've tried, my favorite setup is still the tube amp. But this all came very, very close. So the answer to your question is like, hey, does this sound exactly like a tube preamp? Is no, it doesn't. It sounds, I think it sounds a little bit hotter. The distortion just sounds a touch hotter. But so that was something I just heard in direct comparison. It still sounds freaking amazing. Don't get me wrong. This is a great pedal. Check it out. It's great. Is it gonna replace your tube amp? Maybe yes, maybe no. And in the end, it also depends on your taste. It actually also sounds tighter. So for some kind of modern metal, this might be even better. But I prefer the tube preamp. Still a great pedal. And I think I got the same answer for this. So the really, really cool part about this is how versatile it is. And it is, if you're playing something like this, which is, don't get me wrong, a great clean sounding power amp, this is so much better because you can do so much more with it. A clean power amp, a dirty sounding power amp, and two different preamps. You also got reverb and you got IRs inbuilt. We were not using the IRs, as you know, we were using the real cabs, but this is so much more. So if you're looking for a pedal power amp for your pedal board, if you don't want to carry a tube amp around. Highly recommended. Is this as good as my full tube amp? Same answer. No, in the end, I prefer the tube amp because I feel like it's slightly better, you know. But I think that's why Blackstar are also producing tube amps. You know, this is not going to replace your tube amp, but the combination of those two is way cheaper and way more portable, and it actually sounds great. So now it's up to you and up to the money you want to spend. You know, I'm a strong guy, so I can carry a lot of amps. That's why I still play tube amps. Okay, so you heard me, right? Those are both great pedals, and it's interesting because they're so different. So this is very conservative, very traditional, yet great sounding, and this is a very innovative product, so to say. But you know, even the colors match, right? It's a beautiful combination and it sounds good. All right, boys and girls, that's all for today. You will find links to all the gear I've been using in this video below in the description. I mean, the guitar is no longer available and the amp is no longer available, but the pedals and the cabs and the speakers. Thanks for watching this video. Again, check out the Soldano pedal, or if you're into tube and want to spend more than 4,000 bucks, check out the full SLO100. It's still available. Check out this innovative product. As you might know, we have just released the KOHLE Audio Cult, my academy. If you want to learn more, there's another link below to the KOHLE Audio Cult. And I think I'll just put the KOHLE Audio Cult trailer video at the end of this video. So just keep on watching. I see you in hell, my friends. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.
The cult is near. The KOHLE Audio Cult is coming. The most evil academy the world has ever seen. Learn how to record, mix, and master heavier than ever before. Soon it will be time to join. Time to sell your soul to the devil.